Eleanor Martin stood at the kitchen sink, her hands submerged in warm, soapy water. The sun streamed through the small window, casting a golden hue over the modest kitchen. Eleanor's gaze shifted to the table where her grandchildren, Anna and Sebastian, were engrossed in their summer homework. Anna, at 10, was the picture of concentration, her brow furrowed as she diligently solved math problems. Her younger brother, Sebastian, fidgeted in his seat, his 7-year-old energy barely contained by the worksheet in front of him. "Sebastian, focus!" Anna scolded lightly, not lifting her eyes from her paper. "I am focusing!" Sebastian protested, though his eyes were clearly more interested in the fluttering curtain than the task at hand. Eleanor smiled softly at the exchange. The children were her world now, ever since that terrible night 4 years ago when she lost her daughter Sarah and son-in-law David to a tragic fire. The pain was still there, a dull ache that never fully went away, but she had learned to live with it, to push forward for the sake of the children. "Anna, Sebastian, time for a break," Eleanor called, wiping her hands on a towel. Both children looked up eagerly. Breaks were always welcome. "Can we go outside, Grandma?" Anna asked, her eyes shining with hope. Eleanor nodded, "Just for a little while. Stay close to the house." As the children darted out the door, their laughter echoing through the small house, Eleanor's thoughts wandered. The past few years had been hard, filled with long days of work and even longer nights of worry. Her pension barely covered their needs, and she often took odd jobs around the village to make ends meet. But she had promised the children a special treat this summer, a trip to the seaside, something they had been dreaming about for months. Eleanor walked to the small living room and picked up a well-worn photo album. She flipped through the pages, pausing at a picture of Sarah and David, smiling brightly on their wedding day. They had been so full of life and promise. It was cruel how quickly it had all been taken away. A knock on the door pulled her from her reverie. Eleanor opened it to find Mrs. Jenkins, her neighbor, standing there with a basket of fresh vegetables. "Morning, Eleanor. Thought you might like some of these. Just picked them this morning," Mrs. Jenkins said with a warm smile. Eleanor returned the smile. "Thank you, Margaret. That's very kind of you." "How are the kids?" Mrs. Jenkins asked, peering inside to see Anna and Sebastian playing in the yard. "They're doing well. Full of energy as always," Eleanor replied, a hint of pride in her voice. "They're lucky to have you, Eleanor. You're doing a wonderful job," Mrs. Jenkins said sincerely. Eleanor nodded, accepting the compliment, though she never felt she was doing enough. "Thank you, Margaret. It means a lot." As Mrs. Jenkins left, Eleanor closed the door and returned to her thoughts. The trip to the seaside would be a chance for the children to experience something new, to escape the shadows of their past, even if only for a little while. She had been saving every penny, working late into the night on embroidery projects and mending clothes for the villagers. It wasn't much, but it was enough. In the yard, Anna and Sebastian had found a new game, pretending to be pirates searching for buried treasure. Their laughter rang out, pure and unburdened by the grief that lingered in Eleanor's heart. "Grandma, come play with us," Sebastian called, waving a makeshift sword made from a fallen branch. Eleanor laughed, a sound that felt almost foreign to her. She stepped outside, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face. "All right, but only for a little while," she said, joining in their game. For a moment, the worries and the pain faded away, replaced by the simple joy of being with her grandchildren. In those precious moments, Eleanor found a semblance of peace. As the sun began to set, casting a soft glow over the village, Eleanor gathered the children inside. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, But tonight, they had each other. And that was enough. And then, the day of departure for the long-anticipated vacation arrived. The early morning sun cast a golden glow over the small house Eleanor shared with her grandchildren. She had spent weeks preparing for this trip, driven by the promise she made to Anna and Sebastian. They deserved this escape, this moment of joy amidst the hardships they had faced. The train station buzzed with activity. People hurried by with their suitcases, voices mingling in the summer air. Eleanor stood tall, her eyes scanning the crowd to ensure her grandchildren were close. Anna, ever the responsible one, clutched Sebastian's hand, her eyes wide with excitement. Sebastian, his boundless energy barely contained, bounced on his heels, eager to board the train. "Stay close," Eleanor reminded them, her voice calm but firm. Her hands, weathered by years of hard work, gripped their tickets tightly. She took a deep breath, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. This was a chance to give her grandchildren a glimpse of happiness, something she hadn't seen in their eyes since their parents' untimely deaths. As the train chugged along the tracks, the rhythmic motion seemed to lull them into a peaceful state. Eleanor watched her grandchildren as they marveled at the passing scenery, their faces pressed against the window. Anna pointed out various sights to Sebastian, her voice filled with wonder. It was moments like these that made Eleanor's heart swell with a bitter-sweet ache. She wished their parents were here to witness this joy. "Look, Grandma, the sea!" Anna's voice broke through Eleanor's thoughts. The vast expanse of blue water came into view, glistening under the midday sun. The sight was breathtaking, a stark contrast to the simple life they led in their small town. "Yes, darling, it's beautiful," Eleanor replied, her voice soft with emotion. She reached out and gently squeezed Anna's shoulder, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. They were heading toward a new chapter, a brief respite from their daily struggles. Upon arrival at the beachside resort, the air was filled with the sounds of laughter and waves crashing against the shore. Eleanor felt a sense of relief wash over her. This was what they needed, a break from reality, a chance to create happy memories. The small bungalow they checked into was cozy and inviting. It wasn't luxurious, but it had everything they needed. Eleanor watched as Anna and Sebastian explored their new surroundings, their faces lighting up with each discovery. Sebastian found a shell collection on a shelf and immediately began sorting them, his young mind captivated by the different shapes and colors. "Grandma, can we go to the beach now?" Anna asked, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. "Of course, dear. Let's change into our swimsuits first," Eleanor replied, smiling at their enthusiasm. She was determined to make this vacation unforgettable for them. On the beach, the children ran ahead, their laughter carried away by the sea breeze. Eleanor followed at a slower pace, her heart swelling with pride as she watched them play. Anna and Sebastian built sandcastles, their small hands working diligently to create their masterpieces. Eleanor sat nearby, her eyes never leaving them. She couldn't help but think of Sarah and David, how proud they would be of their children. Mornings were spent splashing in the sea, afternoons exploring the quaint town nearby, and evenings sharing stories by the fire. Eleanor cherished these moments, savoring the simple pleasures of life with her grandchildren. One evening, as they sat on the beach watching the sunset, Anna turned to her grandmother, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Grandma, do you think Mom and Dad can see us?" Eleanor's heart ached at the question. She wrapped an arm around Anna, pulling her close. "I believe they can, sweetheart, and I think they're very proud of you and Sebastian." Anna nodded, seemingly satisfied with the answer. She leaned against Eleanor, her small body warm and comforting. Sebastian, who had been playing with a piece of driftwood, joined them, settling into the embrace. The sky turned shades of orange and pink, casting a magical glow over the water. Eleanor looked at her grandchildren, their faces bathed in the soft light of the setting sun. In that moment, she felt a profound sense of peace. This trip had been more than just a promise fulfilled. It was a healing journey for all of them. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Eleanor whispered a silent prayer of gratitude. They had come a long way, and while the future was uncertain, they had each other. And that, she realized, was more than enough. The beach was alive with the sounds of summer. Children's laughter mixed with the rhythmic crashing of waves, and the air was filled with the salty scent of the sea. Eleanor Martin watched her grandchildren, Anna and Sebastian, as they built an elaborate sandcastle near the water's edge. Their faces were lit with pure joy, a sight that made the hardships of the past few years seem distant. Eleanor, sitting under a large beach umbrella, felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. The sun was gentle, casting a golden hue on the sands of the busy resort. She adjusted her wide-brimmed hat and leaned back, allowing herself a moment of contentment. For now, the world seemed right. Anna, with her bright eyes and quick movements, suddenly froze. She stood up, shading her eyes with her hand, and stared at a couple walking along the beach. "Grandma," she called, her voice tinged with both excitement and confusion. "Look over there. Doesn't that look like Mom and Dad?" Eleanor's heart skipped a beat. She glanced toward the direction Anna was pointing. A young couple, carefree and radiant, strolled hand in hand. The man's build, the woman's walk. It was unsettlingly familiar. She felt the ground shift beneath her feet. How could this be? Sarah and David were gone, had been gone for 4 long years. She rose slowly, her eyes never leaving the couple. "Stay here with Sebastian," she instructed Anna, trying to keep her voice steady. "I need to get a closer look." Eleanor moved with purpose, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts and memories. She weaved through the crowd, her eyes locked on the couple. As she got closer, the woman's face came into clearer view. The resemblance was uncanny. Her heart raced, a mix of hope and fear clawing at her chest. Finally, she was close enough to hear their laughter. It was Sarah's laugh, a sound she thought she'd never hear again. Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. The man with her, though familiar, seemed different. Stronger, perhaps more assured. It wasn't David. It was Alex, David's twin brother. She hadn't seen him in years, not since the funeral. What were they doing here? And why did they look so alive, so happy? Eleanor's mind flashed back to the last time she had seen Alex. He was a shadow of his brother, always in trouble, always causing pain. But now he seemed different, almost like David, but not quite. It was disorienting. She turned and hurried back to Anna and Sebastian, her heart pounding. "Come with me," she said, her voice trembling. "We need to go back to the hotel, now." Anna's eyes were wide with confusion, but she followed obediently, clutching Sebastian's hand. "What's wrong, Grandma? Was it really them?" Eleanor shook her head, trying to compose herself. "I don't know, sweetheart. But we need to be careful." Back at the hotel room, Eleanor locked the door and drew the curtains. She needed to think, to process what she had just seen. "Sit down, both of you," she said gently. Eleanor sighed, feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders. "I'm not sure, dear, but whatever it is, we'll face it together. Just remember that I love you both very much." She hugged them tightly, feeling their small bodies tremble against her. As she held them, she vowed to uncover the truth, no matter how painful. Va roi sao jo. Eleanor jaque tro lai be bien je saknhan moi thu. Eleanor's heart pounded as she followed Sarah and Alex through the winding streets near the beach. The sun was setting, casting long shadows that seemed to mirror the tangled emotions within her. She kept a safe distance, watching their every move, her mind a whirlpool of confusion and disbelief. How could it be that her daughter, whom she had buried 4 years ago, was alive and walking with another man? They finally arrived at a large, modern house near the beach. Eleanor paused, hiding behind a nearby tree, watching as they entered. The house was an architectural marvel, all glass and sharp lines, starkly contrasting the modest home Eleanor shared with her grandchildren. The disparity was jarring, adding another layer to her turmoil. As the door closed behind them, Eleanor felt a surge of anger and determination. She couldn't stand idly by. With shaking hands, she reached for her phone and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? This is Eleanor Martin, she began, her voice trembling. I need to report something. My daughter is alive. She's supposed to be dead. I saw her go into a house on Beachside Avenue. Please, you have to come quickly. The operator's voice was calm, professional. Ma'am, please stay where you are. Officers are on their way. Eleanor ended the call and sank to the ground, her legs unable to support her any longer. She clutched her phone, staring at the house, her mind racing. The minutes stretched into what felt like hours. She replayed every moment since she had seen Sarah on the beach, trying to piece together the impossible. The sound of sirens broke through her reverie. Red and blue lights flashed, reflecting off the glass of the house. 2 police cars pulled up, and officers quickly approached. Eleanor stood, her legs unsteady, and waved them over. Ma'am, are you the one who called? Asked a tall officer with kind eyes. Yes, Eleanor replied, her voice barely above a whisper. My daughter, she died in a fire 4 years ago. But I saw her. She's in that house. The officer nodded, his face serious. We'll handle it. Please stay here. Eleanor watched as the officers approached the house, their movements swift and practiced. They knocked on the door, and moments later, Alex answered. From her vantage point, Eleanor could see the tension in his posture, the flicker of recognition in his eyes as he glanced past the officers towards her. Sarah appeared behind him, her face paling as she saw the police. The officers spoke with them, their voices too low for Eleanor to hear. She saw Sarah's eyes darting, her hands wringing nervously. Alex's face grew stern, his jaw clenched. One officer gestured for them to step outside, and reluctantly, they complied. Eleanor's heart ached as she saw Sarah's fearful expression, the way she clung to Alex's arm. It felt like an eternity before one of the officers returned to Eleanor. Ma'am, we need to take you to the station to sort this out. Can you come with us? Eleanor nodded numbly, following the officer to the car. Her mind was a storm of emotions: fear, confusion, hope, and dread. She glanced back at Sarah, who was now looking directly at her. There was something in her eyes, a plea, or perhaps an apology. Eleanor couldn't tell, and it tore at her heart. Eleanor sat in the dimly lit police station, her hands clasped tightly together. Her mind raced as she replayed the events of the past few hours. The discovery of Sarah and Alex, their initial shock and disbelief, and now the waiting. It was an agonizing wait, filled with the weight of unanswered questions and the burden of a mother's heartache. Across the room, Sarah and Alex sat silently. Sarah's eyes were downcast, her face a mask of guilt and fear. Alex, on the other hand, wore a facade of defiance, his eyes flicking nervously around the room. Eleanor watched them closely, her heart heavy with the betrayal that had unfolded. Detective Harris entered the room, his presence commanding and authoritative. He carried a stack of papers and sat down across from Eleanor. His voice was calm but firm as he began, "Mrs. Martin, I need you to recount everything you saw and heard." Eleanor took a deep breath, steadying herself. She recounted the events meticulously, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. She spoke of the beach, the moment Anna recognized her parents, the disbelief, the following, and finally, the house where she had seen them enter. As Eleanor spoke, Sarah shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She glanced at Alex, who remained stone-faced. When Eleanor finished, Detective Harris turned his attention to Sarah. "Ms. Sarah Martin," he began, his tone unwavering. "Do you have anything to say in your defense?" Sarah looked up, her eyes meeting Eleanor's for the first time. There was a moment of silence, heavy and charged, before she spoke. I never meant for any of this to happen," she began, her voice trembling. "It was Alex. He convinced me." Eleanor's eyes widened with a mixture of disbelief and anger. "Convinced you?" she echoed, her voice rising. "Convinced you to fake your death? To abandon your children? To betray your family?" Sarah flinched at Eleanor's words, tears welling up in her eyes. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she whispered. I thought we could start over, but it got out of hand." Alex finally spoke, his voice cold and dismissive. "Save your sob story, Sarah. We're caught. No point in playing the victim now." Detective Harris interrupted, his voice sharp. "Enough. This is not the place for arguments. Ms. Martin, Mr. Alex Martin, you are both under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, and the attempted murder of David Martin." Eleanor's heart pounded in her chest as the words sank in. Attempted murder. It was worse than she had imagined. The room fell silent as the gravity of the situation settled over them. Detective Harris motioned for the officers to take Sarah and Alex into custody. As they were led away, Sarah looked back at Eleanor, her eyes pleading. "I'm sorry, Mom," she said, her voice breaking. "I never wanted this." Eleanor stared back, her expression unreadable. "Sorry doesn't change what you've done," she replied quietly. "You have to face the consequences of your actions." As Sarah and Alex were taken away, Eleanor felt a mixture of relief and sorrow. The betrayal of her daughter cut deep, but there was also a sense of closure. The truth was out, and now they could begin to heal. Detective Harris approached Eleanor, his expression softened. "Mrs. Martin, I know this is difficult, but you did the right thing. Your grandchildren are lucky to have you." Eleanor nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "I just want what's best for them," she said softly. "They deserve a chance at a normal life." Detective Harris offered a reassuring smile. "And they will have it. We'll make sure they are safe." Eleanor left the police station with a heavy heart. The evening air was cool against her skin, a stark contrast to the emotional storm raging within her. As she walked back to the small motel where Anna and Sebastian were waiting, she thought about the future. It would be a long road ahead, filled with challenges and uncertainties, but she was determined to give her grandchildren the life they deserved. When Eleanor entered the motel room, Anna and Sebastian ran to her, their faces filled with concern. "Grandma, what happened?" Anna asked, her voice trembling. Eleanor knelt down, pulling them into a tight embrace. "Everything is going to be okay," she whispered, her voice strong despite the tears. "We're going to be okay." The night was long, filled with whispered reassurances and quiet tears. As Eleanor held her grandchildren close, she felt a sense of resolve. They had faced a great betrayal, but they would move forward together. The love and strength that bound them as a family would guide them through the darkness. In the early hours of the morning, as the first light of dawn broke through the window, Eleanor made a silent vow. She would protect Anna and Sebastian with all her heart. The prison gates clanged shut with a resonating finality. Eleanor Martin stood outside, clutching the hands of Anna and Sebastian, who looked bewildered and exhausted. The reality of the courtroom drama had not yet fully sunk in for them. Sarah and Alex were sentenced to life in prison, and the gavel's final strike echoed in their minds, a grim reminder of the irreversible change in their lives. The drive back to their small house in Maplewood was silent. Eleanor's mind was a turbulent sea of emotions: anger, betrayal, sadness. But she had to be strong for the children. She glanced at them through the rearview mirror. Anna stared blankly out the window, her once bright eyes now dulled by confusion and hurt. Sebastian, only 7, clutched his worn-out teddy bear, his face buried in its soft fur. As they reached the house, Eleanor took a deep breath. The small, familiar home now felt like a stranger. Every corner seemed to whisper memories of a happier past, before the deception, before the heartbreak. She ushered the children inside and sat them down at the worn kitchen table. "Let's have some tea," she said softly, more to herself than to them. The routine task was a small anchor in the chaos. As the kettle whistled, she poured the tea into chipped mugs, adding milk and sugar with mechanical precision. She placed the mugs in front of the children and sat down, her hands wrapped around her own cup, seeking warmth. "Grandma," Anna began, her voice barely a whisper. "Why did they do it?" Eleanor sighed, searching for the right words. "Sometimes people make terrible choices," she said slowly. "Choices driven by greed, anger, or fear. Your mother and uncle made such choices, and now they have to face the consequences." Anna's eyes filled with tears. "But she was our mum. She loved us." "She did, sweetheart," Eleanor replied, reaching out to squeeze Anna's hand. "In her own way, she did. But love can get twisted when people lose their way." Sebastian looked up, his eyes wide. "Will we ever see her again?" Eleanor's heart broke at the innocence in his question. "Not for a long time," she said gently. "But we have each other, and we will get through this together." Days turned into weeks, and the initial shock began to wear off, replaced by a numb routine. Eleanor found solace in gardening, her hands working the soil, grounding her in the present. She encouraged Anna and Sebastian to help, hoping the simple act of nurturing life would bring them some peace. One afternoon, as they tended to the vegetable patch, Eleanor noticed Anna sitting apart, her hands idle in the dirt. She walked over and sat beside her. "What's on your mind, Anna?" Anna shrugged, keeping her eyes on the ground. "I just don't understand why everything had to change. Why couldn't things stay the way they were?" Eleanor sighed, putting an arm around her. "Life is full of changes, some good, some bad. It's how we deal with them that matters. We can't control everything, but we can choose how we respond." Anna looked up at her, a flicker of determination in her eyes. "I want to be strong, like you." Eleanor smiled, brushing a strand of hair from Anna's face. "You are strong, Anna. Stronger than you know." As the months passed, the small family found a new rhythm. Eleanor made sure to create moments of joy, small pockets of normalcy amidst the storm. They baked cookies, read stories, and planted flowers. Each activity was a step towards healing, a way to weave their fractured lives back together. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Sebastian climbed onto Eleanor's lap. "Grandma, will it always be like this?" Eleanor hugged him close, looking out at the fading light. "No, my dear, it will get better. We just have to take it one day at a time." Anna sat beside them, her head resting on Eleanor's shoulder. "Do you think we'll be happy again?" Eleanor kissed the top of her head. "Yes, Anna. We will find happiness again. It might be different from what we knew, but it will come." As the sky turned to twilight, the three of them sat in silence, the bond between them growing stronger. The pain of the past was still there, a shadow that lingered, but they faced it together. And in that unity, they found a glimmer of hope. The first light of dawn crept through the lace curtains of the small, cozy house. Eleanor Martin sat at the kitchen table, her fingers wrapped around a warm mug of coffee. She took a deep breath, savoring the quiet of the early morning. The scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the faint aroma of lavender from the garden outside, creating a momentary illusion of peace. Anna and Sebastian were still asleep upstairs, their soft breaths the only sounds in the house. Eleanor glanced at the framed photograph on the wall. David and Sarah, their smiles frozen in time. A wave of bittersweet nostalgia washed over her. Eleanor rose from her seat, her movements slow and deliberate. She walked to the back door and stepped outside, feeling the cool morning air on her face. The garden, a patchwork of wildflowers and carefully tended vegetables, was her sanctuary. She bent down to inspect a tomato plant, her fingers brushing the dewy leaves. Each plant held a story, a memory of hard work and perseverance. The sound of footsteps drew her attention. Anna appeared at the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. The 10-year-old's hair was a tangle of curls and her pajamas hung loosely on her slender frame. "Good morning, Grandma," Anna said, her voice still husky from sleep. "Good morning, sweetheart," Eleanor replied, smiling. "Did you sleep well?" Anna nodded, stepping into the garden. She looked around, her eyes brightening as she spotted a ripe tomato. "Can I pick this one?" "Of course," Eleanor said. "Be gentle with it." As Anna carefully plucked the tomato from the vine, Eleanor felt a pang of pride. Despite everything, the children had remained resilient. Anna's curiosity and eagerness to help were small victories in the daily struggle for normalcy. Sebastian joined them shortly after, his small hands clutching a stuffed bear. He looked up at Eleanor with wide, trusting eyes. "Good morning, Grandma." "Good morning, Sebastian," Eleanor said, kneeling to his level. She ruffled his hair affectionately. "Are you hungry?" Sebastian nodded vigorously. "Can we have pancakes?" Eleanor chuckled. "Pancakes it is, but you'll have to help me make them." The kitchen soon filled with the sounds of laughter and the clatter of utensils. Eleanor supervised as Anna and Sebastian mixed the batter, their faces glowing with excitement. It was in these small, everyday moments that Eleanor found solace. As they sat down to breakfast, the conversation flowed easily. Anna recounted a dream she had about flying, her hands mimicking the motion of wings. Sebastian listened intently, his mouth full of pancakes. "Do you think we'll ever go on a real airplane, Grandma?" Anna asked, her eyes wide with wonder. "Maybe one day," Eleanor said, her tone thoughtful. "We'll see where life takes us." After breakfast, the children went outside to play. Eleanor watched them from the window, her heart swelling with a mixture of joy and sorrow. They had lost so much, yet here they were, finding happiness in the simplest of things. Eleanor spent the morning tending to the garden, her thoughts drifting to the past and the future. Each weed she pulled, each flower she nurtured, was a step toward healing. The garden was more than just a hobby. It was a metaphor for their lives, a reminder that growth and renewal were possible even after the harshest winters. By midday, the sun was high in the sky, casting long shadows across the yard. Eleanor wiped her brow and headed inside to prepare lunch. She set the table with care, her movements methodical and precise. It was in these routines that she found a semblance of control. Anna and Sebastian burst through the door, their cheeks flushed from playing outside. They chattered excitedly about a butterfly they had seen, their voices overlapping in their eagerness to share. Eleanor listened, a smile playing on her lips. "It sounds like you two had quite an adventure." "We did," Anna said, her eyes sparkling. "And we made a new friend, a girl named Emily who lives down the street." "That's wonderful," Eleanor said. "Maybe she can come over for lunch one day." As the day drew to a close, Eleanor sat on the porch, watching the sunset. The sky was a canvas of oranges and pinks, a breathtaking end to a day filled with simple joys. Anna and Sebastian sat beside her, their heads resting against her shoulders. In that moment, surrounded by the quiet beauty of their new home, Eleanor felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for now they were together, and that was enough. The sun cast a gentle glow over the new home of Eleanor and her grandchildren, Anna and Sebastian. The morning air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of blooming flowers from the garden that Eleanor tended to with care. Eleanor stood in the kitchen, her hands deftly moving as she prepared breakfast. The rhythmic sound of eggs being whisked and bacon sizzling filled the room. She glanced out of the window, her gaze softening as she watched Anna and Sebastian playing in the yard. The children, now more resilient after the turmoil, displayed an energy that spoke of youthful hope and the promise of new beginnings. "Sebastian, catch!" Anna's voice rang out, clear and vibrant. She tossed a ball to her brother, who caught it with a triumphant grin. Their laughter, light and free, mingled with the chirping of birds, creating a symphony that resonated with the warmth of home. Eleanor turned her attention back to the stove, her mind drifting to the journey they had endured. The court trials, the painful revelations, and the countless nights of tears and whispered prayers had left their mark. But in the midst of the struggle, there was also strength. A strength that bound them together and carried them through the darkest hours. "Breakfast is ready!" Eleanor called out, her voice gentle yet firm. Anna and Sebastian dashed inside, their faces flushed with excitement. "Morning, Grandma," Anna greeted, her eyes sparkling with the curiosity and optimism of a 10-year-old. She hugged Eleanor, a gesture that had become their morning ritual. "Morning, dear," Eleanor replied, planting a soft kiss on Anna's forehead. "Sebastian, wash your hands before you sit at the table." Sebastian nodded, his face lighting up with a mischievous smile. "Okay, Grandma." He raced to the sink, the sound of water running and his cheerful humming filling the air. They gathered around the table, the aroma of freshly cooked food enveloping them. As they ate, the conversation flowed naturally, each word a thread weaving the fabric of their bond stronger. "Grandma, can we go to the park today?" Sebastian asked, his eyes wide with anticipation. Eleanor smiled, a tender expression that crinkled the corners of her eyes. "Of course, sweetheart. We can spend the afternoon there." Anna's face lit up. "Can we bring a picnic? I'll help pack." "Absolutely," Eleanor agreed, her heart swelling with love and pride for her grandchildren. These moments, though simple, were the essence of their new life, a life built on resilience, love, and the quiet joy of togetherness. After breakfast, Eleanor and the children worked together to prepare the picnic. They packed sandwiches, fruits, and a thermos of lemonade. Anna carefully wrapped the sandwiches, her small hands moving with deliberate precision, while Sebastian eagerly filled the basket with snacks. As they walked to the park, the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting dappled shadows through the trees. The path was lined with wildflowers, their vibrant colors a testament to the beauty that could thrive even after a storm. The park was a haven of tranquility, with children's laughter echoing across the playground and the rustle of leaves whispering stories of old. They found a shaded spot under a large oak tree and spread out a blanket. Eleanor watched as Anna and Sebastian played, their joyous shouts mingling with the soft rustling of the wind. She leaned back against the tree, closing her eyes for a moment, savoring the peace that enveloped them. It was in these quiet moments that she felt the weight of their past lift, replaced by the gentle promise of a future filled with hope. "Grandma, look at me!" Sebastian's voice broke through her reverie. She opened her eyes to see him hanging from the monkey bars, his face lit with pride. "You're doing great, Sebastian," she called back, her heart filled with warmth. Anna joined him, the two of them challenging each other to various feats. Eleanor watched, her eyes reflecting a deep contentment. This was their life now, a life where the echoes of pain were slowly replaced by the melodies of laughter and love. As the afternoon sun began to dip towards the horizon, they packed up their picnic and made their way home. The journey back was filled with stories and dreams, each step a testament to their enduring spirit. Back at the house, Eleanor tucked the children into bed, their sleepy smiles a sweet reminder of the day's joys. She lingered for a moment, watching them drift into dreams, her heart full. Stepping outside, Eleanor gazed at the star-studded sky. The night was silent, save for the distant chirp of crickets. She breathed in deeply, the cool air a balm to her soul. In that quiet moment, she felt a profound sense of peace. They had weathered the storm, and now, under this tranquil sky, they were finally home.